But with Bush, they invaded Georgia, right? With Obama, they took Crimea. With Biden, they're trying to take everything. And he won't even know they took it. Sure.
All right, guys. So one of my favorite parts of President Trump's speech at CPAC yesterday was the part where he talked about Russia and Ukraine, okay, and how dangerous it is that the Biden administration is leading us during these times, okay? I do believe that Biden could be leading us to World War III. Now, in the past, I say, well, you know, I am an adherent of MAD, right? The MAD doctrine, right? Mutually assured destruction, which, you know, you would think would prevent us from going into a nuclear war, because nuclear war would mean that everybody dies, okay? Which is why, you know, people don't use nukes, okay? That's the theory for why you don't use nukes, okay? Because everybody would die. However, under the Biden administration, it seems like they're trying to really push us over the edge here, okay, with allowing Zelensky to just do whatever he wants to do, okay, which even MSNBC here is admitting could be unrealistic and dangerous when it comes to retaking Crimea, which is a stated goal of Zelensky. Now, again, going back to President Trump's speech at CPAC, one of my favorite parts, right, is when he said that under Bush, Russia was allowed to take Georgia, okay, and under Obama, Russia took Crimea, and under Biden, they're gonna take everything, and he won't even know it, right? Again, I laughed so hard at that part of the speech because it's so true, right? It's so true. Yeah, Russia's gonna take everything, right? And Biden won't even know it, okay? But again, I think the part of what, you know, Trump's speech that is the most important part is that the leadership that we have in regards to actually getting us to a point of peace with, you know, Putin is lacking, okay? Trump clearly outlined that, hey, I was friends with Putin, right? I got along with Putin, but I let Putin know, if you F with us, okay, we got missiles pointed at Moscow. Same thing with President Xi in China, right? If you F with us, you F with our interests, we got missiles pointed at Beijing, right? And they didn't want to F with me because they knew there was a 10% chance that, hey, I would do what I said, right? So again, you know, I'm missing President Trump's leadership during these times, right? I really am. But again, what we have here is a clip from the mainstream liberal media that is kind of a surprise, okay? Because this to me sounds like Russian propaganda, right? These people sound like Putin apologists by basically saying that Zelensky's goal of taking Crimea is unrealistic and dangerous. Even they're worried about just allowing Zelensky to basically do whatever he wants, right, on U.S. taxpayer dime. So let's actually get into this, because this is a really, again, fascinating clip.
President Zelensky vowed on Sunday to take back Crimea. How realistic is that? The people there whom you spoke to view themselves as Russian.
Yeah, they're Russian, right? They're Russian. I don't think this is going to go the way that Zelensky thinks is going to go, okay? Sometimes you just got to take an L and keep it moving. There's some things that are just, there's some battles that are just not worth fighting.
That's right. From those people that we spoke to, it seemed unrealistic. And Andrew, I want to show you some new picture that we filmed yesterday at the port of Sevastopol. Now, this is the closest that any US news crew has got to the Russian Black Sea Fleet in many, many years. What you're seeing here are President Putin's ships at that port. Why it's important is because Vladimir Putin will be determined to defend that port, to not have it taken away from him. He may well do pretty much anything to try to achieve that, and the reason why is because it is so strategically important to Russia. But here's the irony: the fact since he launched that invasion a year ago in Ukraine, the Ukrainians now will be determined not to have the Black Sea Fleet there, potentially threatening their coast for years to come. So it is a very, very dangerous standoff that suggests that this could pan out for some time to come. It's hard to see how you reach a negotiation over that. And there in Sevastopol,
you don't. You don't reach a negotiation over that, right? Again, and this is why the Biden policy of just allowing Zelensky to do whatever he wants, giving him whatever weapons he wants, right, for the most part. Again, I'm not sure if that's wise, because he might end up doing something that could really, really, really escalate this to a whole nother level. I mean, it's already very escalated. But again, it's just fascinating to see the mainstream liberal media admit that what this guy is saying is actually dangerous, right? It's unrealistic, and it's like, all right, well, maybe we should have some checks here. But again, you know, hey, before in the past, they said if you talk like this, if you say stuff like this, you're a Putin apologist, right? You're speaking from the Kremlin, right? You're a Kremlin apologist.
Poll, Andrew, I've got to tell you, I mean, there was just military everywhere, absolutely everywhere. It is a military town. So again, when, for example, Victoria Nuland talks about, at the very least, we want Crimea to be demilitarized, I found myself standing there and wondering, how on earth does that happen?
And Keir, you know, we keep hearing that Crimea is exactly what NATO and the U.S. fear Zelensky will try to go into with long-range weapons, maybe even with those F-16s if he ever were to get them, which I don't think he will, not in the near term.
I think he will. I think he is going to get. I think they're going to give him everything he wants. Because the way we're looking at this is that, well, this is a cheaper way of actually fighting Russia, right? We love proxy wars with Russia, okay? We loved it in Afghanistan, right? We loved it in Syria and other parts of the Middle East. We're always doing these proxy wars with Russia. Okay. And, you know, in this case right here, the way they're looking at it is that, well, we don't sacrifice any American lives. However, Zelensky is telling us that, you know, hey, it could come down to that if you choose not to defend us.
The U.S. will have to send their sons and daughters exactly the same way as we are sending their sons and daughters to war, and they will have to fight. Because it's NATO that we're talking about, and they will be dying, God forbid, because it's a horrible thing.
Yeah, so according to Zelensky, if we don't defend NATO, then, yeah, our kids are going to die in a war with Russia, right? That is what he's saying, right? Okay, if you don't defend us, it's over, okay? So, I mean, look, here's the thing. I think that it will be over if we continue to escalate things, or put it this way, we don't try to come to some type of peace agreement with Russia ASAP. Okay, that is what I believe, right? And I'm not necessarily sure taking back Crimea or attempting to take it back Crimea is moving in the direction of actually trying to have peace with Russia. Okay, I'm not necessarily sure if that's the direction that we're actually headed in here.
I'm worried that that is a tripwire for Vladimir Putin. What is your take on that?
That's what they are worried about. I mean, that we're standing in the place that has Jake Sullivan, for example, really worried, Andrew. And the reason why is because the idea that NATO weapons might kind of land on this place, potentially kill Russian civilians, and that would be an escalation. But by the way, this is an enormous challenge. And General Mark Milley has made this clear. This is an enormous challenge for the Ukrainians. Here's why. Let's just give you a close-up look at that bridge behind me there. That's how we travelled into Crimea. It is open now. It is one of only two ways to get here. The other is a land bridge over to the northwest of here that is very, very much exposed. So with land forces, how do you take Crimea if you are the Ukrainians? That's why General Mark Milley says he thinks that it will be extremely difficult for the Ukrainians to push the Russians out of here. We have seen substantial defences around this bridge behind me that is President Putin's pride and joy, Andrea, and that's not surprising. But as we saw in my piece, I mean, we also know that the Ukrainians have wanted, or at least they haven't admitted it, but it seems pretty likely that it was the Ukrainians that they've wanted to target that bridge behind me there. Again, if you take down that bridge, how do the civilians leave? These are very, very difficult questions if we do get to the point where Crimea is an objective that the Ukrainians realistically can look at militarily.
Yeah. So, a rare moment of truth here from the mainstream liberal media in regards to some of the ridiculous goals and things that Zelensky is talking about in regards to this war, right? Again, look, I think everybody, well, I don't know. I mean, but for me, I'm hoping the best for Ukraine, right? I hope that they can fend off the Russians, okay? They can protect the territories that they have. I'm wishing the best for them, but, hey, I don't think that going on an offensive against Russia or, launching attacks inside of Russia or in Crimea, which would technically be in Russia at this point, right? I don't think that's a good idea, right? I don't think that's a good idea, and I don't think that's a good idea for the Biden administration just to allow this guy to just do whatever he wants, okay? His policy of, just allow Zelensky to just lead us on everything. I think that's ridiculous. I don't think it's wise. I don't think it's smart. And I think this is, again, why we need actual real leadership in the White House, a.k.a. President Trump, right? And not this guy Biden, because again, he's going to lead us into another world war, right? That's exactly what's about to happen here if this keeps going. So let me know what you guys think. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. Most importantly, share a Black conservative perspective. Peace.